When I first got my start as a New York City tour guide, I worked on the double-decker buses. There was always this one part of the downtown route that was sure to bring a smile to everyone's faces, and that was when we passed the Charging Bull sculpture on the lower end of Broadway. Everyone would start to lean over the railing to try to get a good look at the bull, and they would see this big long line of people with their selfie sticks trying to get a good shot with the front of the bull. And then as the bus progressed, they would start to lose it when they would see a longer line at the back of the bull and all the people trying to take a picture with the crown jewels, as I called them. They are the shiniest part of the bull because of how often people rub them for good luck. Today, I want to share with you the unbelievable story about how this sculpture found its way to this location. Let's get into today's story. An aspiring artist named Arturo Di Modica was living in Sicily in the early 1960s. When he confronted his father and told him that he wanted to become an artist, his father told him that was a waste of time and he should do something better with his life. But this is what Arturo really wanted to do, and so when he turned 18, he decided to run away from home to pursue his dream of becoming an artist. He fled to Florence, where he was able to start taking some art classes. He supported himself by taking on a number of different jobs. He worked long days, long hours, but he did whatever it took in order to become this artist. However, he couldn't afford to use local foundries, so instead he would build his own tools. And with these tools, he would work day and night creating. Unfortunately, in 1966, the city flooded and it destroyed a lot of his work. So once again, he went back to square one and began pumping out work, this time with more experience under his belt. And by 1968, he had enough work where he could put on his very first major art show. And although the art show went okay, in reality, Arturo was unhappy in Florence. He had ideas for art that were maybe a little too futuristic for them, and they placed limitations on his work. So his art mentors told him he should take his ideas to America. Arturo had thought about this idea before, but it had always scared him. And the reason it was so scary was because Arturo had no money. He had enough to get to America, but would immediately need to find work. If he couldn't find work, he'd basically become homeless. So did he think he had the right skills to make it in America? He decided it was worth the risk. So he gathered his belongings and departed for New York City in 1970. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, one New York neighborhood in particular was very kind to aspiring artists, and that was the Soho neighborhood, which is one of these portmanteau neighborhoods, shorthand for south of Houston Street. Soho had these raw spaces with poor wiring and plumbing. This just meant one thing to artists: it was cheap. These buildings were affordable. You had these loft spaces that were anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 square feet. I mean, big spaces, and they were going for only $100 per month. And although technically speaking, people weren't supposed to live in these buildings, it was actually against the law, artists did it anyway. And by 1970, it was legal for all of these artists to use these loft spaces as residential space. Arturo set up his first studio on Grand Street. He did what he could for work, and he got by. He created sculptures in his studio, and rather than find a gallery to display his work, he figured because Soho was so accepting of the art scene that he could just display his work on the sidewalk in front of his place. But 7 years went by and he wasn't really getting noticed. He tried having this major exhibition at Battery Park, but there wasn't a lot of interest. He tried making some calls, but art critics were just hanging up on him. And so he decided if he was going to get noticed, he had to do something big. Arturo had 8 abstract marble sculptures that he wanted people to see. He wanted to leave them somewhere everyone would see. But he also said to himself, you know what? People see art all of the time, but they don't talk about it when they go home. How can I get people talking about my art? He wanted to leave these pieces at Rockefeller Center, but at Rockefeller Center, he'd have to compete with the Prometheus statue above the Lower Plaza and Atlas directly across from St. Patrick's Cathedral. In order to draw attention away from those magnificent sculptures, he decided to leave his 8 pieces in the middle of Fifth Avenue. The sculptures completely blocked traffic. It was a huge mess. He was hit with a fine and he was nearly arrested, but the stunt earned him plenty of media coverage. The mayor even met with him, and each of those 8 pieces sold. Mind you, he did all of this with maybe an elementary understanding of the English language. He continued doing this over and over again, collecting fines and accepting the publicity. Temporary pieces of his could be found at Trump Tower or Lincoln Center. people continued to buy his artwork. Everyone wanted Arturo's pieces, and they got more and more intricate. His next order of business, though, was getting out of his first studio and into something different. So he bought the property 54 Crosby Street, which was a vacant lot at the time, and because he was an artist, he figured why bother with a contractor? Instead, he built his own studio, no permits or anything. He bought 8,000 bricks from a priest for $400 and built up a little studio for himself. He would transport wooden beams during the night, and nobody was the wiser. When he decided he needed even more space, he started to dig out a basement. He did so with a pick and a shovel, and his studio was finished by the 1980s. This is where he would live, this is where he would do his art. Fast forward to October 19th, 1987. In New York, this was known as Black Monday, although in other countries it's Black Tuesday due to time differences. There was this big stock market crash that was largely unexpected. The country was suffering, New York was suffering, and then you have Arturo, who was still living a pretty successful financial life thanks to his art. He felt like he owed something to the city, though, because they had helped him achieve his lifelong dream. So he came up with this idea for the charging bull, and he would spend the next 2 years creating it. He had the bull cast in a foundry in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. It cost about $360,000 to create, cast, and eventually install, and he's using his own money for this. The message he wanted to convey was if you want to do something in a moment things are very bad, you can do it. You can do it by yourself. You must be strong, like a bull. Arturo completed the sculpture in 1989. The bronze sculpture is 7,100 pounds. It's 11 feet tall, 16 feet long. And what's cool about it is a bull is a symbol of financial optimism and prosperity, like a bull market, as opposed to a bear market when prices are declining. Since this bull sculpture was supposed to inspire and provide hope to the people of New York in this financial sense, it only made sense to try this guerrilla art in New York's financial district. So he went out looking at a bunch of different places where he could potentially leave the bull, plenty of iconic buildings and areas in the financial district, but the spot that seemed to be calling out to him was the New York Stock Exchange. It's tucked away from the main roads, but is a globally significant spot. It would be perfect for his gift to the city. He would go there every night, timing out when police made their rounds, and he determined he had about a 4-minute window to drop it off and then disappear into the darkness again, because obviously he'd be doing this at night. On the night of December 14th, 1989, Arturo got a group of friends together to help him transport the bull by putting it on the back of a truck using a crane. They arrived around 1 a.m. on December 15th and waited for the patrol to go by so that their 4-minute window could open. Once that police patrol went by, the group sprang into action. They backed up the truck in front of the New York Stock Exchange, but when they did, there was something there that had not been there earlier in the week. In front of the stock exchange was a 60-foot Christmas tree. It just so happened that the tree was set up earlier that day and was sitting in the exact spot that Arturo wanted to place his bull sculpture. There wasn't much time to make a decision because they now had less than 4 minutes before a patrol came back. So Arturo said, you know what? Leave the bull under the Christmas tree. It is my gift to the city. So they did. The bull was left under the tree and the group of friends fled the scene. However, Arturo stayed behind. He hid until the following morning so that he could see the public's reaction to his sculpture. When the people of New York woke up and went to work the following day, they fell in love with this sculpture. Everybody was in awe of its magnitude. Well, almost everyone. Remember, Arturo didn't tell anybody that he was doing this. He crafted this sculpture in secret. Nobody knew about it. He didn't have any city permits or anything. So even though the general public loved the sculpture, the New York Stock Exchange is seeing this thing and saying, what the heck is this? Could it be a bomb or something? Can we get it away from the building? And they called the police to have them take it away. And the police did. Not even 24 hours, and the sculpture was in an impound lot. The story made the front page of the New York Post, and the people of New York gathered and complained about the police doing this, right? How could they take away this thing that all of us clearly love? Less than a week later, the police said, you know what? There's nothing wrong with this. It's just a sculpture. If the people like it, we can put it somewhere. However, instead of putting it in front of the stock exchange, they moved it a few blocks away to the little traffic median at the end of Broadway by Bowling Green. And even though it was given a temporary permit, it has never moved. That does not mean it has not caused more controversy over the years. For example, Arturo has sued Walmart for selling replicas of the bull and using it in advertising. He also sued Random House for using a photo of the bull on the cover of a book that painted it in a completely different light from its original intention. Arturo wanted the perception of the bull to stay the same, but it hasn't always worked out that way. The bull has become a symbol of capitalism instead, so in 2011, when the Occupy Wall Street demonstrators wanted to direct their anger at a scapegoat, the bull became that symbol. It has been vandalized in a number of incidents, and maybe the most famous controversy associated with the bull was when a Wall Street asset management company placed another statue in front of it in 2017. That statue was the Fearless Girl, and the story of how the Fearless Girl arrived in the same location almost mirrors how the Charging Bull arrived too. It too was created and left for the public to discover together. However, instead of on Christmas, it was left in anticipation of International Women's Day. And instead of facing the New York Stock Exchange, it faced off against the Charging Bull, which once again changed the meaning of the bull. Arturo didn't like that and wanted the Fearless Girl removed because it was just a cheap advertising trick in his eyes. Funny enough, she has moved and is now facing the New York Stock Exchange almost in the exact same spot that the bull was left in 1989. Arturo died in 2021 after a long-fought battle with cancer. He was 80 years old. So that's going to do it, folks. It doesn't matter what time of year you choose to visit New York City. If you ever want to get a photo with the Charging Bull, the earlier or later in the day you go, the better. But once tourists are out of their hotels, all bets are off. You will certainly be waiting in line. The only choice you have to make from that point is front or back. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, like the post, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all in the new year. Deuces, kids.